I'm Eva Fierst, co-host of Pictures of an Exhibition. And today we are at the University Museum of Contemporary Art at UMass. And we are going to see an exhibition called Palimpsest. I hope I pronounced this right. But what the important part is of this exhibition is you have to use a magnifying glass. So before I continue talking about the magnifying glass, I would like to introduce you to Procheta Olson.
Hi.
Welcome, Procheta.
Hi. I'm very excited to be talking to you today and sharing about the exhibition. So this is the dialogue with the collection exhibition that the UMCA has done over the years. But unlike other years, the unique thing about this exhibition is that I have pulled one work instead of many from the collection. So the Dialogue with the Collection exhibition invites local artists and curators to come and explore the amazing, broad range of works that are there in the University Museum of Contemporary Art's permanent collection, and explore that vast collection to pick works that speak to their own work and put the artist's work with the permanent collection's work in conversation with each other. Unlike other years, I chose to take one single piece, very powerful, but one single piece, which is this 10 feet long print by Yann Fei Jie.
It covers the entire center room of this wing of the museum. Procheta, this is a Chinese artist, right? Yann Fei Jie.
Yeah.
He's a contemporary artist, and this scroll is depicting the Three Gorges and the damming of the Three Gorges in China. What happened there was that thousands of people had to evacuate and leave the area before it was dammed to make
Powered
plant
yeah.
and a huge dam. Oftentimes they took their belongings, the whole houses with them, and migrated to different areas, and it was a huge, a huge upset for the vast amount of people. And so displacement is part of your theme of your work as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And I think I first started making work about that, or even investigating what that means, when I came to the U.S. I moved to the U.S. to study art at the age of 22, and then went back for a couple of years. But then when I married a person of American origin, and I started realizing that, wow, I'm going to have kids who are going to be not what I had always imagined, which was a continuity with my culture, but it's going to be different. And also realizing how I was changing in this new place and how my home was changing, I started thinking about ideas of disorientation, place, and our relationship with place.
But in order to see them, you've got to have this magnifying glass, because Procheta is working in a very traditional Indian format, which is miniature paintings. Have you always been doing this?
No, it evolved over the last 5 or 6 years, and I've really enjoyed working in that format. I do draw heavily from not just Indian miniatures, but Persian, Chinese, Mughal miniatures. And what I find fascinating is that all of those traditions, there's a lot of exchanges historically present within them. A lot of time you'd have Chinese artists working in Persian courts. So you already do see a crossing over. And I think that's actually segues perfectly into my work, because I'm very interested in historical cultural exchanges and how cultural objects have crossed over throughout time.
There's a lot of cross-pollination going on.
Yeah, and that globalization is not new, so
yes.
I'm interested in that.
It's now a little bit larger than it used to be, but it's old, right?
Yeah.
So which one of these images should we see first?
Well, I think because we just talked about cultural objects crossing over and just the value of that and cultural exchanges, we should go over to that room and pick any one of the paintings there and talk about it.
I know exactly which one I want to see. Let's go.
Okay.
So here we are at a tiny picture that is 6x8 and completely different from contemporary art pieces now where larger is better. Not here. We have an image that is loaded with details, and really the only way to really see it is with a magnifying glass. You have different spaces within this tall picture frame, and I would say 6 maybe? Would you say there are 6 different distinct spaces, and you have a lot of people in there doing various different things. It's totally loaded with imagery and symbolism. Procheta, what would you say about this piece?
So I was thinking about how in miniature painting you do have all these different vignettes happening simultaneously, and how architecture is also seen almost like a bird's eye view as opposed to in linear perspective.
Yes.
So that was important to me, and through that format, I have been thinking about cultural exchanges again as it is happening in the current moment.
And here is a lot of cultural exchange going on. I particularly like the one in the upper left side, where there's a woman who's kind of pulling with an American flag. She's pulling people
like these
into
masses
that.
of people.
Please come. There's this wonderful land, and come. You can get rich and famous, and you will have a wonderful life.
So I do have a funny story behind that. So that's actually an Indian actress who's now she does the lead role in Quantico, the TV show, and it's a really big deal that she's an Indian actress now working in on the global platform, and she has kind of become like a representation of, well, just brand identity for a nation on the global platform.
It's like the Indian dream.
Exactly.
Right.
But so I think it's interesting. On one hand, I feel like, well, it's good. Let people see what talent we have in India. On the other hand, I feel like, why do we need Western validation to feel like we have achieved something? And that's what I was thinking about. And it's the dress she wore to the Tonys, which is really trivia. But I do like pulling from little things like news clips and events that have happened, and maybe even like weave in personal experiences and weave it together to create this kind of like psychological architecture.
Should we go to another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So this piece here in the center of the exhibition space is a masterpiece of miniature painting. And it is so well done, so much detail. Procheta, how do you do it?
With a lot of strain to my eyes. So my prescription has changed because of this type of work. But I use a Kolinsky sable, and I just use a very fine brush.
Can you say what that is?
Yeah, so a Kolinsky sable, it's a Russian, it's made from a Russian, like a squirrel in Russia or Siberia. And it's just a squirrel hairbrush, and it's very fine. So the turpentine, so normally that's a brush that you would use for watercolor, but because turpentine is erosive, those brushes like get eaten through very quickly. Yeah, like it lasts for a month or two maybe.
So here is a lot of reference to traditional miniature paintings, but there's also, it's laden with contemporary meaning. So what made you do this?
So with this painting, I was thinking, again, like keeping in line with the idea of exploring cultural objects, transactions, cultural exchanges. I was thinking about how I had thought of the West before I came to the US, and growing up and I'm very much interested in India's like socio-political, economic history. And just because, I grew up in that place till I lived there till I was 22. My parents are from them. It is what I inherited as far as like my sense of place. And we didn't have like things like KFC or packaged goods weren't available, like Tetra Pak or canned food, canned Coca-Cola. When that came to India, that was a big deal. So I kind of fetishize those objects in the way I render them in this like almost jewel-like, like floral, in that type of a depiction. And also at the same time, it's a little absurd because things like a dishwasher, which was also not something that people in India had growing up, is the same scale as, say, an Adidas shoe. They're like, so the scale is all conflated to kind of, address the absurdity of how some objects have value when it's like seen in a different culture.
So this piece stands out because it has a different kind of a conversation. It's fairly simple at first glance. You see two trains in the air, old-fashioned trains that look almost like toy trains, and you just it makes you smile. You think it's like a happy image, and especially one train goes one way, the other one is upside down and goes the other way. It's almost like this mirror image of some sort. And then you look again, and then you say, what is that? There's a frame to this. And then you look at the frame, and then it becomes interesting. Procheta, what made you do this like this?
So as part of the research, I was looking at how many, it's a well-known fact that during the partition of India, and this is actually kind of probably the most intense point of connection with Yann Fei Jie's work is, yes, I have been working on this idea of displacement, but it's very different when you're talking about ideas of being away from home versus being forced out of your home. That's very different. One has luxury, the other one does not, there's no choice. But in this issue, which I address in this painting, I think the connection is the strongest because it addresses the just like unmentionable atrocities that took place during the partition of India, and rape, pillage, arson, murder, the communal riots that took place when India was divided into Pakistan and India.
It was in 1947.
And when the independence of India was announced, people actually didn't even know who received which land, so you didn't know if you were on the wrong side of the border. And you were given very little time to pack your bags and move. And the communal riots had been building up for a while anyway.
So let me just clarify this one. This partition took place in order to separate Muslims from Hindus.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So that was a dramatic rendering of a country's fabric.
Yes.
Of people who kind of lived together peacefully.
Yes. Yes.
And all of a sudden there was this division.
Right. And it's so complex because it's not like the British said, ha ha ha, we're going to separate them. There were definitely centuries past when they had a policy of divide and rule, and that was definitely there. But India has a long history of even Muslim invasion before the British invasion, and no invasion has been without violence. So it's not like the British were the first people to come and colonize India. But they are so much tied to even what that means, what India means. But this painting specifically addresses what's known as the legend of the ghost trains. I shouldn't say legend because it happened. And it was a known fact that back then, millions of refugees crowded into trains that could barely hold them, climbing between bogies and wagons, climbing on top of the trains with the desperate hope that somehow they can get themselves and their families across and make it alive. But on the way or along the way, however it was planned by the opposite communal side, everyone on that train would be massacred.
And that's what you see in the frame. So this edge here is actually the atrocities that Procheta is trying to portray at the same time. She has this idealized image of the trains. So the attention should be at the frame as well as the trains. But the frame is where there is a lot going on, and hanging and burning and massacres. Mm-hmm. And she very skillfully inverts the subject matter from the center of the image to the frame.
Yeah.
That's very unusual.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much
for
this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So the show is up until April 26th.
Yeah.
So please come and see the show. Bring some time. Don't bring the magnifying glass because they are here. And enjoy getting deeply into these small images. Thank you.